Dawn rises slowly over the African plains. The sky bleeds from deep violet into burning gold, and the land exhales the cold breath of night for the last time. Dew trembles on the tips of dry grass. Insects fall silent. Even the wind seems to hesitate. Somewhere in the distance, a low rumble rolls across the savanna. Not thunder, a roar. It is the voice of a kingdom awakening. Here, in this vast and unforgiving wilderness, time is not measured in days or years, but in blood, claws, and the echo of dominance. Every footprint carved into the dust is a signature of survival. Every scar is a chapter of an unfinished war. This land remembers every king who has fallen, and listens for every king yet to rise. The sun climbs higher, shadows retreat, and with the light comes movement. Herds begin to stir. Birds surge into the sky. The great circle of life turns once more. But beneath this fragile calm, power is always shifting. Because in these plains, there are no guarantees, no mercy written into the law of nature, only strength and the will to claim it. For generations, empires of fur and fang have risen and collapsed upon this soil. Coalitions have shattered. Dynasties have burned out under the weight of time. Yet some names refuse to fade into dust. Some stories carve themselves so deeply into the land that even the wind carries their memory. This is one of those stories. A story forged in bloodlines and betrayal, in survival and defiance, in the rise of two brothers who would one day shake the foundations of a kingdom. Before they were kings, they were cubs. Before their names echoed across the reserve, they were whispers in the grass. And before legend crowned them with immortality, they stood on the fragile edge between life and extinction. This is the story of their reign. This is the legend of power, earned, defended, and finally, surrendered to time. This is the saga of the Ross brothers. In the heart of southern Africa, where the earth burns beneath an endless sky, lies a realm ruled not by walls or crowns, but by tooth, claw, and ancient law. This is the Greater Kruger, a living battlefield older than memory, a place where every river has witnessed blood, every tree has sheltered both hunter and prey, and every horizon has carried the silhouettes of kings. Here, the land itself decides who may rule. Timbavati, Nigala, Birmingham. These are not just names carved onto maps, they are sanctuaries of power. Thrones without stone, kingdoms without borders. Their frontiers shift not by treaties, but by roaring challenges in the dark and violent negotiations beneath the sun. In this world, lineage matters. Strength is currency, and every generation is forged under the silent pressure of those who came before. Cubs are born into expectation, males grow into weapons, and every coalition is a gamble against time. The grass hides more than prey, it hides ambition. The rivers carry more than water, they carry history. The wind carries more than dust, it carries warning, because no rule here is permanent. For every dominant king that rises, another waits in the shadows, young, hungry, watching, measuring every weakened step, every fading roar, every moment of hesitation. This land has known giants before, coalitions that ruled for seasons, for years, for lifetimes measured only by survival. Some fell to rivals, some to age, all eventually to time. And yet the savanna never pauses. When one empire collapses, another is already forming in the distance. In this eternal contest, destiny is not chosen, it is seized. It was into this sacred battlefield that two small lives were born in 2010, beneath skies heavy with dust and destiny. They would inherit not peace, but a legacy of fire, not safety, but expectation written into their very blood. Long before their names would be feared, before their roars would command entire prides, before their shadows would stretch across multiple territories, the land was already preparing their trial. Because on these plains, the earth does not create kings, it tests them. In the year 2010, when dust storms swept across the southern plains, and the rhythm of life pulsed. Without dominant males, a pride becomes vulnerable. Without protection, cubs become targets. Takeovers in the wild are rarely merciful. New rulers do not tolerate the blood of their enemies. The law is ancient. The verdict is final. Death waits patiently for the unguarded. The Ross cubs were born into a throne already collapsing. Yet destiny twisted its course. Into the vacuum of power stepped two formidable warriors from a neighboring bloodline, the Giraffe Pride males, known across the reserve by the ominous names Good and Bad, scarred by battle, hardened by seasons of war, veterans of countless territorial conflicts. They seized the Ross territory as conquerors. The lionesses waited for the inevitable slaughter, but it never came. Instead of killing the helpless cubs, as the ruthless logic of dominance demanded, Good and Bad did the unthinkable. They spared them. Not only spared them, they accepted them. The orphaned heirs of a fallen dynasty were raised beneath the shadows of foreign kings. They fed beside them, slept beneath their watch, learned the first laws of survival under their protection. In that single impossible decision, the fate of the Ross brothers was rewritten. From the jaws of extinction, they were granted something almost unheard of in the wild, a second beginning. Still nameless, still fragile, still unaware of the storms waiting for them. But already deep within their blood, the fire of conquest had begun to stir. Seasons turned, and the fragile cubs who once clung to survival beneath Chujo Dominio began to change. Muscle replaced softness, play became practice. Curiosity sharpened into instinct, under the vigilant eyes of Good and Bad. The young Ross brothers learned the ancient script of the wild. They learned how to read the wind, how to melt into tall grass, how to measure distance with a predator's patience. Every stumble was a lesson, every small victory, a spark of the kings they were becoming. They stalked insects, then birds, then antelope. Their jaws strengthened, their shoulders broadened, their confidence grew with every passing moon. By 2014, the cubs were no longer cubs. They were young males marked by destiny and driven by blood. But the savanna does not allow princes to remain in the shadow of kings forever. By 2015, the ancient call of exile began to pulse through their veins. The bond with their natal pride weakened. The space between safety and ambition grew thin. Tension mounted in quiet glances, and shifting positions at kills. Instinct demanded separation. One dawn, without ceremony and without farewell, the Ross brothers left the land of their birth. They stepped into the world as nomads. No territory, no pride, no protection. Only each other. Their journey carried them across unfamiliar riverbeds and into hostile grasslands, through borderlands carved by rival coalitions. Hunger stalked them relentlessly. Every shadow held a threat. Every roar in the distance was a possible death sentence. Yet they pressed forward, young, bold, reckless. In the neighboring Timby Reserve, they began to test the edges of power. They scent-marked trees they did not yet own, patrolled borders they could not yet defend, challenged presences far greater than themselves. Sometimes they retreated, sometimes they bled. But they never broke. By the end of 2015, their silhouettes were being seen near the Aoka Pride. Still too young to rule, still too weak to conquer, yet impossible to ignore. The savanna had begun to whisper their coming. Two brothers on the edge of destiny, not yet kings, but no longer cubs. By mid-2016, the whispers surrounding the Ross brothers had turned into warnings. Their bodies were heavier now, their steps slower, but deliberate. Their eyes no longer carried the uncertainty of cubs, but the cold calculation of rising predators. They were still young, but youth, when sharpened by hunger, can become a weapon. Deep within the Timby Reserve, fate finally placed them before a true test of power. While patrolling a disputed corridor, the brothers crossed paths with one of the formidable trilogy males, battle-hardened, dominant, an established ruler of the region. What followed was brief, violent, explosive. Dust rose in choking waves as claws met flesh. Roars tore through the trees. The earth itself seemed to recoil as the young nomads did. The unthinkable. They stood their ground. Against all expectation, the trilogy male fell. They learned the rhythms of patrols, measured the distance between roars, counted the strength of their enemies, and then they moved. By the closing months of 2016, confrontation was inevitable. What followed was not a single battle, but a sustained campaign of pressure. Night after night, the brothers pushed deeper, challenged calls, stole kills, marked boundaries with defiance, written in scent and sound. By early 2017, it was over. The Ross brothers stood as the new rulers of the Aoka Pride. Beside them moved 3 young yearlings, cubs sired by the former dominant giraffe males. In a world where foreign offspring often meet swift death, their fate hung by a thread. Yet once more the brothers broke expectation. They allowed the cubs to live, and when new litters were born later that same year, this time carrying Ross blood, their reign was sealed not only by dominance, but by lineage. For the first time, the Ross brothers were no longer nomads. They were kings. By early 2018, the borders of the Aoka territory could no longer contain the ambition of the Ross brothers. Their roars rolled farther each night. Their patrols stretched wider with every passing moon. What had once been conquest had now become expansion. To the west lay Nagala. Beyond it, the domain of the formidable Birmingham Pride. This was no ordinary pride. It was a stronghold of experienced lionesses, hardened by years of survival, guarded by the legacy of powerful males who had ruled before. To challenge Birmingham was to challenge a throne, defended by blood and memory. Yet the Ross brothers did not hesitate. Their invasion was slow, silent, relentless. They tested the borders first, stealing kills, answering roars, leaving their scent like a written declaration of war. The old rulers resisted, but age had begun to weigh on their limbs. With each encounter, the balance shifted. Then the kingdom fell. In a swift and brutal takeover, the Ross brothers claimed the Birmingham Pride as their own. Cubs sired by the previous rulers were killed in the violent rewrite of power. Only one young male was spared, a living reminder of the fallen kings. With the throne secured, the empire began to grow. New cubs were born under Ross rule. Among them were miracles of pale fire, white-coated cubs, living proof that the rare blood of the Ross lineage had survived every attempt at erasure. Against the golden grass, they shone like ghosts of legend. Under the brothers' watchful eyes, the Birmingham Pride entered a period of extraordinary stability. The savanna echoed with their authority. Their deep roars rolled across the plains like drums of empire. Soon their influence extended even further. The Birmingham breakaway pride fell under their control. For the first time in their reign, the Ross brothers ruled 2 prides simultaneously, an achievement few coalitions ever reach. By 2020, the Birmingham had become a true mega-pride, an army of claws and hunger large enough to challenge the most dangerous prey on the plains. Buffalo became targets. Massive dust-choked battles unfolded beneath the burning sun. When the giants fell, chaos erupted. Dozens of lions surged toward the carcass, growling, snapping, climbing over one another in a violent ballet of survival. For the cubs, these feeding frenzies were not moments of comfort. They were classrooms of blood. And above it all, watching from the dust and shadow, stood the Ross brothers, kings at the absolute summit of their power. By 2022, the years had finally begun to carve their signatures into the bodies of the Ross brothers. Once tireless warriors, they now moved with the weight of countless battles etched into their bones. Their manes were heavier, their steps slower, their scars deeper. When they rose after resting, the effort lingered for a breath longer than it once had. Their roars still thundered across the plains. But the force behind them was no longer unstoppable. The savanna, always patient, sensed the shift. From the eastern borders came new shadows, the Amiri males. Massive, muscular. In the brutal peak of their strength, 2 brothers forged in conflict long before they ever crossed into Ross territory. Their arrival was not sudden. It was measured, calculated. Night after night, their voices answered the aging kings from the darkness. The challenge had begun. At first, the encounters were distant. Roars traded across invisible lines, carcasses stolen at the edges of the empire, slow tests of nerve and resolve. The Ross brothers. Then the unthinkable slowly unfolded. The Birmingham Pride, The heart of the Ross Empire began to slip from their grasp. The Amiri males established mating rights. Their scent replaced the mark of fallen kings. A new generation of cubs was conceived under foreign rule. A dynasty that had taken years to build was being dismantled in silence. By the end of 2022, the Ross brothers were kings no longer. They retreated to their final stronghold. The Birmingham Breakaway Pride, one kingdom lost, one battlefield remaining. Their empire had fractured, but their spirit had not yet surrendered. Even in decline, the old kings still roared into the night, defiant, wounded, refusing for now to vanish quietly into legend. By 2023, the reign of the Ross brothers had been reduced to echoes. The Birmingham Pride was gone, taken by younger, stronger conquerors. Only the Birmingham Breakaway Pride remained beneath their fading command. Yet even cornered, the old kings did not yield easily. They still patrolled, still answered every distant roar, still defended what little remained of their broken empire. During these unsettled months, a young male from the Breakaway Pride dared to challenge their dominance. Youth tested age in silent standoffs and tense approaches at kills. Each encounter was a reminder that time had armed the next generation. But the old kings still had teeth. November 2023. A massive buffalo lay fallen in the dust, its final breath torn from its lungs by the sheer strength of Hercules, the dominant force of the giraffe pride. The air was thick with the scent of blood and triumph. Then from the shadows, the past emerged. Two aging legends stepped into the open. Endurance stepped into the open. The Ross brothers. The ground tightened with tension as Hercules lifted his head to meet their approach. For a heartbeat, the savanna held its breath. Ancient rivals measured one another beneath the burning sky. Then the storm broke. The Ross brothers charged. A brief eruption of snarls, claws, and shaking dust. Fury against force. But the battle did not become a war. Within minutes, hierarchy was renegotiated. The three males fed in a reluctant truce. Old power colliding with new strength around the fallen giant of meat and bone. The dark-maned Ross male, infamous for his ruthless aggression, bullied Hercules relentlessly. Snapping, pushing, asserting dominance through sheer resolve. Old habits, old authority. Eventually, hunger calmed the storm. Three kings, bound by necessity, shared a battlefield meal. A last flicker of the empire that once ruled without question. Not long after, something unexpected emerged from the dust of decline. A young male from the Birmingham Pride, a son of the Ross brothers, was seen moving cautiously beside his aging fathers. Guides whispered of an ancient possibility, succession. The thought stirred like a fragile flame in the darkness. Could the old kings pass their crown before it fell? For a fleeting moment, hope walked beside them. But beyond the borderlands, youth was already gathering. From the neighboring Thornbush Reserve, a final storm began to rise. 6 young males from the Manor Pride, powerful, confident, forged in the reckless certainty of youth, pushed deep into the territory of the Birmingham Breakaway Pride. Their movements were bold, their presence absolute. They did not come to test. They came to take. For the aging Ross brothers, this was the end written in muscle and momentum. Their roars, once feared across half the reserve, now struggled to hold the line against the rising chorus of challengers. One of the Manana males was soon far away. Other voices rise. New males test their strength beneath the stars. Young coalitions sharpen their courage in shadow and hunger. The ancient cycle continues, indifferent to names, unmoved by legacy. Where kings fall, challengers are always waiting. The blood of the Ross brothers still lives in the next generation. Their story is not finished, only transformed. The throne they once defended now stands open once more, daring the bold to claim it. And somewhere out there in the vast gold of the savanna, the next legend already walks toward destiny.